Se7en, 1995, is more than a movie. It's an unforgettable cinematic experience that challenged audiences with its harrowing themes and set a new standard for psychological thrillers. Directed by the visionary David Fincher and anchored by performances from Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Spacey, and Gwyneth Paltrow, it uses a dark, rain-drenched metropolis as a stage for moral questions about justice, obsession, and the nature of evil. Yet the film's grim backdrop and twisted murders aren't mere shock tactics. They're part of a meticulously crafted narrative that lingers in your mind long after the credits roll. Some people left theaters in stunned silence, while others immediately discussed its iconic ending and layered symbolism. The production was fraught with near accidents, hidden injuries, studio conflicts, and last-minute casting changes. Despite, or perhaps because of, those intense experiences, Se7en found its way into the pantheon of cult classics. Since then, it has inspired everything from parody skits to academic essays. If you've ever wanted to pry open the story's secrets, brace yourself. We're about to plunge into 30 compelling facts that reveal new dimensions of a film that continues to fascinate viewers, spark debate, and hold strong as a genre-defining masterpiece. Get ready to see Se7en in a light you've never seen before. Andrew Kevin Walker's gloomy muse. Screenwriter Andrew Kevin Walker crafted Se7en after moving from suburban Pennsylvania to the grittier environs of New York City in the late 1980s. Instead of endless creative inspiration, Walker found a sense of alienation. Sirens, cramped subway stations, and ominous alleyways all fueled the cynical worldview that seeped into Se7en's unnamed metropolis. By not naming the city, Walker makes the vibe universal. Any sprawling urban center could harbor the silent horrors that Detective Somerset and Detective Mills discover. It's as if Walker's real-life disillusionment became a living, breathing character on the page, heightening the film's relentlessly oppressive tone. From X-Files pitch to film classic. Believe it or not, Se7en originally started life as a possible X-Files episode. Walker, a fan of the show's eerie atmosphere, drafted a spec script that captured its mix of intrigue and dread. A friend at New Line Cinema, however, believed the premise deserved more breathing room than a TV hour would allow. That suggestion led Walker to expand the idea into a full-length feature, giving it the psychological depth and brooding intensity that would come to define Se7en. Had Walker stayed the course for television, we might never have experienced the film's slow-burn terror and lasting cultural impact. The battle over the ending. Early drafts of Se7en contained the now famous bleak finale, which New Line Cinema initially rejected. The studio pushed for a happier resolution, fearful that audiences would be alienated by the grim conclusion. Through a mistake, David Fincher was sent the unaltered script. He read the uncompromising ending and declared he'd only direct if that dark finale remained. The tug-of-war ended when Fincher, newly protective of creative control after prior studio interference on Alien 3, got his way. This insistence on preserving the original ending gave Se7en its haunting, unforgettable final moments, ensuring the film would become a cinema milestone rather than a watered-down thriller. Brad Pitt's contractual safeguard. By the time Brad Pitt signed on to play Detective David Mills, he was determined to protect Se7en from the type of studio meddling he'd seen on Legends of the Fall. He included a condition in his contract guaranteeing the ending's integrity. No toned-down version allowed. Reportedly, Pitt even vetoed an alternate scenario where Morgan Freeman's Somerset would take the pivotal action that Mills ultimately does. Pitt's stance was a significant gamble. However, it preserved the film's narrative authenticity and emotional resonance. This act of artistic protection by a Hollywood star was rare then, foreshadowing a growing era in which A-listers used their influence to safeguard a film's creative vision. The real-life injury that made the cut during a rain-drenched chase scene, Brad Pitt slipped and crashed his arm through a windshield, severing a tendon. Production could have halted, but Fincher and the writing team opted to weave Pitt's cast into the story, having Mills injure his arm during the foot pursuit of John Doe. This unplanned complication introduced an extra layer of vulnerability to Mills and aligned eerily with Se7en's harsh realism. Pitt's genuine pain and frustration added a tangible edge to his performance, a visceral reminder that for both character and actor, the risk of serious harm was all too real in this merciless environment. John C. McGinley's genuine terror. If you've watched Se7en, chances are you recall the moment the SWAT team finds the sloth victim. Actor John C. McGinley, playing the SWAT leader, had no clue Michael Reed McKay, the sloth victim, was actually alive under the grotesque makeup. When McKay suddenly gasped, McGinley's startled reaction was 100% authentic. Fincher orchestrated this surprise to capture raw horror on film. The scene's authenticity underlines the director's commitment to realism, even if it meant keeping cast members in the dark. Movie history is filled with staged frights. Se7en took it to the next level by turning the crew's genuine shock into cinematic gold. Michael Reed McKay's sacrifice. Michael Reed McKay, cast as the sloth victim, weighed only 98 pounds at the time. Producers considered asking him to lose even more weight, but relented when he refused. The result was still deeply unsettling, an almost skeletal figure that appeared one step from death. While CGI and special effects were progressing in the mid-90s, Se7en relied primarily on practical makeup and authentic physicality for its horror. McKay's performance was so convincing that some viewers believed advanced technology had been used to create his ghastly appearance. This low-tech approach only heightened the unease, making Sloth's predicament feel unbearably real. Kevin Spacey's secret credit. Kevin Spacey's name doesn't appear in Se7en's opening credits or early promotional materials, a deliberate strategy to heighten the impact of John Doe's reveal. Marketing campaigns often hinge on star power, but Fincher insisted on maintaining the secrecy that John Doe's late arrival demanded. When audiences saw Spacey walk into the police station, they were genuinely surprised. This clever ruse marked one of the earliest instances of modern stealth casting. It demonstrated that strategic omission can be just as impactful as a big celebrity billing, especially when the film's narrative hinges on shock value and mystery. Casting switch at the 11th hour. Spacey's last-minute attachment to Se7en happened because Fincher caught an early glimpse of the usual suspects and was impressed by Spacey's calm menace. Another actor was initially slotted for John Doe, but Fincher made a bold pivot just 2 days before shooting those scenes. The gamble paid off. Spacey's portrayal of John Doe oozes an unsettling control. He rarely raises his voice, yet commands full attention whenever he's on screen. It's hard to picture anyone else in a role so integral to the film's tension. His cool detachment elevates the grim plot to a chilling study in moral and psychological extremes. Fincher's return. After Alien 3, Woes, David Fincher nearly swore off directing studio films following his troubled experience with Alien 3, which had been heavily compromised by executive meddling. But when Se7en's script, with its original ending, landed in his hands, it reignited his interest in exploring dark, challenging material on his terms. The cautionary tale of Alien 3 made Fincher fiercely protective of creative control. In Se7en, he channeled his frustration into a meticulously crafted vision, ensuring no corner would be cut for the sake of mainstream palatability. That unwavering dedication birthed an atmosphere of suffocating tension, shaping Fincher's long-term reputation as a director who doesn't shy away from cinematic grimness. Budget battles and studio nerves. Budgeted initially at around $30 to $31 million, Se7en ballooned closer to $33 to $34 million under Fincher's exacting standards. This made it New Line Cinema's most expensive film at the time. Executives worried about recouping costs from a project this dark and unconventional, yet Fincher's commitment to authenticity, shooting in persistent rain, using elaborate sets, and orchestrating night shoots, convinced the studio to double down. Their investment paid off spectacularly when the film became a box office hit, grossing over $300 million worldwide. Through these financial skirmishes, Fincher proved that a director's unwavering artistic vision could triumph even when it rattles corporate comfort zones. Klut's influence on Se7en's look cinematographer Darius Khondji drew inspiration from Alan J. Pakula's Klut, 1971, to shape Se7en's shadowy aesthetic. Klut famously used dramatic top lighting and harsh flashlight effects to accentuate claustrophobic tension. In Se7, beams of stark light slice through the darkness of crime scenes, revealing details almost reluctantly, as though the city itself wants to hide them. This visual approach underscores the theme that knowledge is hard-won in a world blanketed by moral grime. By marrying Klut's gritty mood with more modern, unflinching perspectives, Khondji helped Se7en stand apart from other mid-90s thrillers and gave it a timeless visual identity. Borrowing raw style from Cops' reality TV show, Cops might be the last place you'd expect David Fincher to look for inspiration, but he found the show's over-the-shoulder camera work compelling. Se7en's handheld shots in tight hallways and during raids mimic that urgent documentary feel. This approach thrusts the audience into the action, as if we're trailing behind the detectives with no protective barrier. In standard Hollywood fare, scenes are often polished and choreographed. Here, the jostling camera intensifies the sense that we're witnessing the unexpected. That observational style made Se7en feel more grounded, letting viewers absorb each shock on the same visceral level as the characters. Howard Shore's ominous composition, choosing Howard Shore, famed for The Silence of the Lambs, was a no-brainer to score Se7en. Shore assembled a massive orchestra to craft an unsettling soundscape dominated by horns, low strings, and discordant piano runs. Tracks like Portrait of John Doe cast a foreboding pall, reflecting the killer's icy logic. While some film scores guide audiences toward comfort or heroic victory, Shore's lifts the film's dread to new heights. You sense a malevolence pulsing beneath every line of dialogue. By the time the narrative crescendos, the music has already primed you to expect no happy endings. It's a masterclass in psychological audio design. Box office showdown with showgirls Se7en faced off against Paul Verhoeven's controversial Showgirls on September 22, 1995. Where Showgirls floundered amid critical scorn and tepid earnings, Se7en soared, ultimately grossing over $327 million worldwide. Audiences, perhaps tired of mainstream glam or formulaic action, gravitated toward Se7en's unfiltered look at human depravity. Word of mouth turned it into a must-see for those intrigued by something riskier. Critics split on whether the film was boundary-breaking art or gratuitous grimness, but that same controversy fueled curiosity among moviegoers. In the end, Se7en cemented itself as a shocking yet intellectually compelling hit, overshadowing Showgirls both financially and in cultural impact. George Christie's cameo quirk Hollywood Reporter columnist George Christie makes a sneaky appearance as the janitor tasked with scratching Somerset's name off an office door. On set, he arrived chauffeured and demanded frequent coffee breaks, leaving Fincher perplexed about who this extra was. Only later did Fincher learn that Christie was a prominent figure in Hollywood's social scene. Though the cameo is blink and you'll miss it, the behind-the-scenes anecdote adds a dash of humor to an otherwise relentlessly grim production. It's also a fun piece of trivia that demonstrates how cameos can inject oddball energy into a film's creation story. Pitt's performance overshadowed. Despite Brad Pitt's layered portrayal of Detective Mills, media attention often fixated on his off-screen life, particularly his relationship with Jennifer Aniston. Many pegged him as just another pretty face. Yet his work in Se7en reveals a character who transforms from naive rookie to emotionally shattered man before our eyes. Pitt's defiance of the studio, his real-life injury, and his intense dedication come together to render Mills painfully human. Over time, critics have re-evaluated Pitt's performance, acknowledging the emotional complexity he brought. In a film saturated with darkness, Mills's unraveling is crucial. It shows the personal toll exacted by confronting a profound level of evil. Gwyneth Paltrow, the quiet anchor. By contrast, Gwyneth Paltrow was a relatively fresh face when Fincher cast her as Tracy, Mills's compassionate yet lonely wife. Her real-life relationship with Pitt lent their on-screen chemistry an intimacy that's hard to fake. Tracy's few scenes often serve as the film's moral compass, offering glimpses of what normalcy and empathy look like in a place drowning in despair. Though overshadowed by the showier roles of Mills, Somerset, and John Doe, Paltrow's gentle performance remains pivotal. It reminds us of the innocent lives at stake, making the final act all the more devastating. The alternate director, Ernest Dickerson. Before Fincher's name became irreversibly linked to Se7en, Ernest Dickerson, director of Juice, was in talks to helm the project. Dickerson's background suggested a raw, street-level approach that might have leaned more on the urban drama side. While that take could have been compelling, it's hard to envision Se7en without Fincher's signature gloom and intricately crafted tension. Sometimes, a project finds exactly the right artist who resonates with its spirit, and that synergy is what transforms a good film into a cultural phenomenon. Fincher's track record of pushing boundaries merged seamlessly with Walker's grim script, birthing the unstoppable force that is Se7en. Handheld versus tripod in the finale. When Se7en's climactic box scene unfolds, Fincher cleverly differentiates the emotional states of the characters through camera work. For Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, the camera is handheld, reflecting the swirling turmoil and desperation they experience. For Kevin Spacey's John Doe, the camera remains rock-steady on a tripod, emphasizing his disconcerting composure. It's a brilliant visual dichotomy. Mills and Somerset quake under the weight of Doe's final revelation, while Doe stands resolute, unflinching. The effect is so subtle you might not consciously register it, but it undeniably ratchets up tension, making the finale as nerve-shredding as any in modern cinema. The unseen horror of lust, Se7en, is notorious for its graphic themes, yet many of its most disturbing acts occur off-screen. The lust murder, for instance, unfolds through dialogue and the shell-shocked witness's account of a forced atrocity. The decision to withhold explicit visuals is more than a budgetary choice. It's a narrative strategy that lets the audience's imagination roam. By planting the seeds of horror, the film ensures viewers create images often more unsettling than any prosthetic gore could provide. Fincher understood that implication can be even more horrifying than explicit depiction, a principle that has made Se7en's murders linger in memory longer than standard splatter scenes. Fabricating Eternal Rain Los Angeles, famed for its sunshine, stood in for Se7en's bleak, rain-soaked city, forcing the production to rely heavily on rain machines. Filming in persistent downpours challenged the cast and crew, complicating lighting setups, dampening sets, and even contributing to Pitt's real-life injury. Yet the relentless rain became almost an existential force, reflecting the story's pervasive hopelessness. It's as if the heavens themselves are disgusted by the sins unfolding below. That meteorological oppression accentuates the detectives' frustration, soaking not just their clothes, but their spirits in an unending deluge of moral filth and frustration. Tower Records and Writer's Block. Andrew Kevin Walker reportedly wrote Se7en while holding a day job at a New York City Tower Records store. Surrounded by the humdrum tasks of stocking shelves and checking out customers, he channeled his frustration into the screenplay at night. That sense of existential fatigue, caught between unfulfilling work and a city that felt punitive, fueled the script's dark edge. The contrast between mundane retail life and a macabre tale of murders inspired by the 7 deadly sins underscores how everyday disillusionment can spawn profound creativity. It's a telling reminder that some of the most jarring art emerges from the routines we might otherwise overlook. The color noir aesthetic. Rather than using classic black and white, Se7en relies on a palette of murky browns, greens, and washed-out grays laced with bursts of crimson. Conji's cinematography merges elements from films like The French Connection with a more modern sense of menace. The result is often called color noir, every scene steeped in gloom. Street lamps illuminate nothing but more darkness. Fluorescent bulbs flicker ominously in cramped apartments. Red stands out like a distress flare, symbolizing violence or moral corrosion. This deft color management cements Se7en's signature look, ensuring viewers feel as if they're peering into a realm where daylight offers no sanctuary. John Doe's prequel in comic form. A limited 7-issue comic series by Zenescope Entertainment explored John Doe's backstory, published from 2006 to 2007. Each issue tackled one of the 7 deadly sins, revealing how Doe's warped philosophy took shape. While it never reached the mainstream audience of the film, devoted fans found the deeper exploration fascinating and deeply unsettling. The comics delve into Doe's meticulous planning and the personal motivations that shaped his crusade. This storyline extension offers more clues into how a presumably average man could become a monster, reinforcing Se7en's central thesis that evil festers where moral conviction warps into fanaticism. Novelization with expanded insights. Not content to merely rehash the script, Anthony Bruno's novelization of Se7en, released in November 1995, adds interior monologues and emotional nuances missing from the film. Readers gain insights into Mills's simmering frustration, Somerset's hidden regrets, and even John Doe's cryptic thought processes. Though novelizations often go unnoticed, Se7en's literary counterpart broadens the story in ways screen time can't always accommodate. For fans obsessed with the moral and existential questions the film raises, the novel offers an extended stay in Se7en's suffocating world. It won't replace the film's visual immediacy, but it does deepen appreciation for each character's plight. A 4K restoration for the 30th anniversary. In celebration of Se7en's 30th anniversary, David Fincher revealed a 4K remaster, drawn from the original camera negative. Scheduled for IMAX on January 3, 2025, and 4K Blu-ray on January 7th. It promises sharper details and richer shadows without altering the core essence. Fincher vowed not to clean up the film's grittiness or lighten its mood. This approach aims to preserve Se7en's integral despair while making each raindrop and nuance of darkness more striking than ever. For longtime devotees, it's a chance to rediscover the film's aesthetic, and for newcomers, a potent introduction to one of cinema's most haunting experiences. divisive yet celebrated critiques. Se7en eventually garnered an 84% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but reviews were initially polarized. Some lauded the meticulous craftsmanship and compelling performances, praising its unrelenting tension. Others slammed it as exploitative and nihilistic, arguing it offered cruelty without redemption. Over time, many critics have come to view Se7en as a near-perfect marriage of style and substance, a film that confronts the darkest corners of human nature without flinching. The very debates that once challenged its reputation have since underscored its cultural significance. Today, Se7en stands as one of the defining works in neo-noir cinema, precisely because it dares to unsettle in ways that few mainstream films attempt. Morgan Freeman's vintage recognition. In 2015, Morgan Freeman received a Best Vintage Performance Award for his portrayal of Detective Somerset. This unofficial or lesser-known accolade recognized how Freeman's grounded, introspective take on the jaded detective gave Se7en its moral center. Somerset wrestles with his conscience in an unraveling world, combining intellect, empathy, and sorrow. Freeman's aura of dignified exhaustion contrasts sharply with Mills's brash idealism, creating one of film's most memorable mentor-mentee dynamics. Even decades later, audiences find comfort in Somerset's calm reasoning, only to have that comfort shattered by the film's brutal conclusion. The Hitchcockian thread. Many viewers and critics have noted a distinctly Hitchcockian atmosphere in Se7en, particularly in its reliance on nail-biting tension over overt jump scares. The film unspools methodically, letting you think you're watching a conventional detective story before blindsiding you with something far more horrific. Alfred Hitchcock often focused on ordinary people trapped in extraordinary circumstances. While John Doe's elaborate murders might exceed the scope of vintage Hitchcock, the essential formula is there. A horrifying scenario where investigation collides with personal demons, culminating in a cataclysmic reveal. Se7en modernized and intensified that Hitchcock blueprint, giving the thriller genre a jolt it still reverberates from today. Ultimately, Se7en's legacy is sealed by its willingness to confront the abyss without blinking. While many films tease dark themes, few commit as wholeheartedly to them as Se7en does. Its fierce battles behind the scenes over the ending, its last-minute casting changes, and its unabashed descent into humanity's worst impulses all combine to make it a one-of-a-kind cinematic journey. From Brad Pitt's on-set injuries to Morgan Freeman's quietly tragic wisdom, every creative choice forms part of an unsettling mosaic that continues to captivate new generations. The film's stunning box office success in 1995 and ongoing cultural relevance underscore its importance as both a piece of entertainment and a bleak commentary on moral decay. As audiences revisit it or discover it for the first time, they're reminded that true horror doesn't reside in jump scares or flashy effects, but in the psychology of evil and the fallibility of human beings trying to stop it. Se7en remains a sobering reminder of how thin the line is between order and chaos, and just how devastating it can be when that line is crossed.